In today's video, I show you how to turn this stick into usable, strong rope, as you can see. Now, I'm going to do a little test here of me doing a few pull-ups just to show you how strong it is. Ideally, you wouldn't actually do this with the rope. I just wanted to show you, yeah, it's fairly strong. Now, you could do this with absolutely zero tools. However, I'm going to be using a folding saw, just a little one, and also my knife. As you can see, this one is from the survival kit, which I'll put in the description below. You're also going to need to find a material. So the material I'm going to be using is a white willow, and the material that you use is very important to find fallen branches, and you should find these kind of shoots coming off the fallen branches. I really would not recommend chopping down actual like trees that have not fallen down. Yeah, this one on the floor has got loads of little shoots coming off it, and you can see just how long they are. And this is going to be a perfect resource for us to make some really strong rope. So once you have picked your branch you're going to use, you simply want to remove it from the fallen tree. Now, you can snap it off if you don't have a saw, and yeah, it will work just as good. It won't be as clean as a cut, which is a little bit better for this scenario. However, you may be in a situation where you just don't have a saw, so yeah. Next up, we're going to get our branch and simply snap all the little branches off it. And yeah, I'm just going to go all the way up the branch, removing every single little bit. You can save the little bits because we can, I don't know, use them to craft something like a basket or even some smaller rope or string. So don't throw them away, don't get rid of them. Put them in a nice pile and you will be able to use them again. Bits like this, where the bark starts coming off, ideally you are going to want to make a cut like this so the bark does not continue to rip off. And yeah, just get rid of that little bit, and now it's nice and clean, as you can see, and we are ready for the next stage. Now, what we're going to want to do next is a very important stage. I'm going to take my knife and score a line all the way down the stick, going through the bark. So you want to protrude the bark. And yeah, if you do not have a knife, you could easily, well, I say easily, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You could peel off a little strip all the way down the stick, just making sure it's a little strip, and you'll get the same effect. It will just be a thicker line, and you will have less material to use. So using a knife, yeah, it is better, but you can still do this without. And as you can see, I'm going all the way down, being very careful. I had a little slip there, not to slip anywhere near my hands. So make sure you keep pushing it along. Maybe find a fallen tree like I have to use as a little workbench, and take it all the way down to the end. And once you're satisfied that you've done a score line all the way down to the end, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Again, it will look a little bit thicker if you're just peeling it all the way down. And now for the fun bit, we're actually going to need to peel the bark off of the stick itself. And that is what the score line is going to be for. It's going to make things a lot easier. And we're going to try and remove the bark in one complete bit. Now, you may get like little bulges from where sticks came out and stuff like that. What you're going to want to do is get your hand under it and kind of like pull around, and it should still come unstuck. And we should be able to get a nice solid piece of the bark. And ideally, you want to do this all the way up to the top and bottom, removing all of the bark in one piece. That way we're going to have the most material to use for our rope. So you can see it's a little bit tricky. And also the inside, the stick, is very, very wet. You'll notice that at this point if you're using the same material. I should have noted at the start, there are different materials you could also use. I would definitely say that this process of removing the bark is probably the longest process of actually making the rope. The reason being is because, yes, we are trying to remove it in one whole piece. Now, it is quite a tough material if you're using the same material, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem. But every now and again, you may get a little rip and a tear, which you can just see just there. And I'm just making sure that those tears don't rip off into smaller bits. I really do want to have a full sheet of bark once I'm done with this. So I'm really going to take my time going across all the bumps, making sure I loosen all of the bumps rather than pull it and then it will rip. So yeah, I'm just making sure I do it all nice and slow and yeah, solidly. Once you're finished, you should have a very wet, slimy stick, a little bit like this. Again, you should save this. You could definitely use this for something. But most importantly, you will have a sheet of bark, which we can now use to make into some rope and start the next stage. You can see all the way down, we've got a nice full sheet, and we're going to be able to make a fair few little strips out of this. So, there we go. The next stage is what I like to do now is cut it in half. Now, I know what a few of you might be thinking. Well, why didn't you just do that on the branch? It's a lot easier to work with if you just remove it entirely. And that way you don't like have little strips ripping off if you try and do this step on the branch. So it's just a lot easier to cut it with your knife after. Alternatively, you can just rip it all the way down, being very, very careful if you don't have a knife. So I'm just getting some more manageable bits right now. And now I've got some more manageable bits. What I'm going to want to aim to make is 3 different strips. These strips need to be around about 1 centimeter thick. And you can see here, I'm not using my knife. I'm using the rip technique to show you that it is just as easy. And to be quite honest, I do prefer making the strips with the rip technique. You're just being a little bit more careful. However, there are circumstances where you may need your knife, or it could take a little bit longer using the rip technique. I will show you when that is. Basically, what happens is when you're ripping it down, you can see it starts to go from thin to a little bit thicker. And if that is the case, you're going to want to redeem yourself. Now, I'm going to show you how to redeem yourself with a knife rather than the rip technique. You just literally have to rip it. A little bit tedious to do. But with a knife, what you're going to want to do, you can see here, it starts to get really thick. So I'm going to grab my knife. And I'm going to make a score mark underneath, a little cut mark. And then we're going to tear the strip into that cut mark so we can kind of continue from there rather than where we was going. So we may have a little bit of access on the end. You can see here I'm just ripping it after I've made the score with my knife. And now I'm going to cut the bark itself, which was fairly strong. And once I'm satisfied with the repair, I can continue to rip it all the way down. Again, this could be a little bit tedious. I mean, your bark's not going to be a perfect sheet, so there are going to be little obstacles you are going to have to overcome. You can see right at the end here, it does start to get a little bit thicker for me, so I am using the knife technique a little bit more. But eventually, I do get there, and I get a strip. Of course, you're going to need to do this 2 more times to make 1 piece of rope. And yeah, as soon as you've got 3 strips, we are pretty ready to go. You can see here, again, it's not a perfect centimeter. It's actually thicker in some places. But I mean, it's manageable. It's workable as long as it's not too thick. And your strips look a little bit like this. You should be good to go. So, what I'm going to do now with these 3, they are not the longest strips, but I'll show you how to make them even longer near at the end. But But yeah, like I said, what I'm going to do with these three right now is I'm going to knot them off. This is just going to give me a tied off end where nothing will come loose, because we are going to have to do a little plait. So to do a knot, it's just a simple knot. We're just going to make a loop and throw the ends of the bark through the loop. Just a simple knot on the end. Make sure it's tight, and you are good to go. So what I'm doing here, I'm using a crack in a fallen tree to hold the knot. This makes things a lot easier. And now I'm going to start the braid. So I'm going to attempt to explain how to braid, but it's kind of confusing. You see how I've got the three separated like this? We're going to want to take one from either the left or the right side and pass it over the center. So I take the right one and pass it over the center, making that the new centerpiece. And then we're going to take the left piece and pass that over the new centerpiece, and we're going to rinse and repeat this. So now I'll take the right one, taking it over the new centerpiece. Of course, you can't see it very well because of my hands. And now I'm taking the left one, taking it over the new centerpiece, and I'm making sure the pieces are not getting tangled at the end. Got a little bit of a better angle for you guys. So we have the centerpiece. I'm going to go over with the left one, and then over with the right one of the new centerpiece. We're just making a simple braid. Now, if I didn't explain that too well, I mean, you could quickly search a tutorial on how to do it. It's very, very simple. It's a good skill to have. It's going to strengthen up our rope immensely. And once you've braided it, it should look a little bit like this. Now, depending on how skilled you are at braiding, I mean, it could take you a fair while, but you can actually get pretty fast with doing this. And at the end, of course, you're going to have 3 loose strands. So what you're going to want to do is actually tie them off. We're going to use the loop technique again and just use a simple knot. So we're going to get the 3 strands of bark and pull them through, and once again tighten them up. This is just going to tighten off the braid to make sure it doesn't come undone. And now we have a completed piece of rope. However, this piece of rope is actually really quite small. Let me show you a way how you can combine 2 small pieces of rope to make a longer piece. You can, of course, combine multiple pieces to make a huge piece if you need a huge piece. So here we've got a non-tied piece and we've got a ready tied piece. So both of these are tied at the end, as you can see. So we're going to take the knot and basically get our non-tied piece, getting a loop ready. We're going to take the knot of the other piece and put it through that loop. We are then going to feed the 3 pieces of bark strands through the loop and tighten it all together, making sure that the second knot is in the loop, just like that. And basically it will just knot it onto the rope, allowing you to extend your rope. Now, if you've got any little stray bits, what I like to do is wrap it around and tuck it into the braid, as you can see. And that just makes things nice and tidy. Alternatively, you could cut them off. But, yeah, I mean, it probably makes it a little bit stronger as well if you actually wrap it around and include them in the braid. But there we go. There is a longer piece of rope. And like I said, this thing is fairly strong. We can use it for a number of different things. Personally, I'm going to be building a shelter, so I need a bunch of this for a shelter. But yeah, here we go. Here's the strength test once again. And that, my friends, is all I've got time for today. We'll catch you on the next one.